Check 1, 2, check 1, 2. Is it working or not? I can see green, so I think it's working.
How do you feel like when when I have to go like on work trips and sometimes I have to like stay the night somewhere or I have to fly somewhere? Like, how do you feel about that?
I want to get sad.
Why do you get sad?
Because I miss you.
Oh, you do?
And I like to practice baseball with you.
Oh.
Stuff like that. Go to the store, cook dinner with you.
Yeah. Even if it's just for like one day?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll still miss you.
Yeah. I miss you guys too. Do you think...
At least I get to call you. Do I think what?
Yeah. Well, you know what's cool is we get to FaceTime so I can actually like see you.
I know.
And when I was growing up, they didn't have that. So then I just could like talk on the phone and I could just hear their voice, but I couldn't see them. And now I get to FaceTime with you, right?
I know, because we have better technology. Tech is just like a short. It's technology.
Oh, tech is short for technology? Oh, wow.
Technology, I think it has 4 syllables.
Technology. Yep, you got it. 4.
So is that all you want to say?
Almost. And then what does it feel like when I come home?
I feel so happy. I'm like, Dad, you're back. I'm just happy.
Yeah. Like sometimes I just like open the door to the garage and then you just like run over, huh?
Yeah.
And I'm super excited to see you guys too.
I know, but like I'm filled with joy.
You're filled with joy?
Yeah.
Oh, me too.
Like I really love it.
Yeah.
I really, really love it.
You ever heard of the phrase "distance makes the heart grow fonder"? Does that make sense to you?
No, I've never heard of that.
So that basically means when somebody is away for a little while, then it's extra special when they come back. Hi, Let's Ride listeners. It's your friend Paul Estrada. If you've gotten any value out of any of the episodes, I'm here to ask you to pause this episode and take a moment to subscribe to the show wherever you're listening to this podcast. If you're a real go-getter, please take a moment to leave a review of the podcast. I'd be indebted to you forever. Thank you for supporting and listening to the show and for going on this journey with us. Pause, subscribe, and let's ride. Our guest today is a successful executive in the logistics and transportation industry. During her career, she climbed the ladder from an entry-level position to vice president of a multi-billion-dollar transportation company, all before turning 40. She's an expert at using emotional intelligence to build meaningful relationships, both personally and professionally, while also knowing when to flip the switch and apply assertive leadership. In addition to her professional success, she has mastered the balance of a challenging career while being present for family and prioritizing the creation of what truly matters, a fulfilling personal life. I'm excited for our guest, an opportunity to catch up with a longtime friend, Alyssa Coriel. But I did think it would be interesting because as I've started this, I realized that I don't really reflect a lot on my own personal history. And so as I talk to different people, and I also feel like I don't have a great memory, but as I'm having conversations with people, it seems to trigger thoughts and that I haven't had I'm like, oh, I totally forgot about that. And so as I was preparing and thinking about this conversation, I was like, well, this will be a good one because this basically goes all the way back to I'm going to call it my corporate career origin story, because I've known you since day one of like working a big boy job in the corporate world, so to speak. So people can kind of catch a glimpse of that version of me. I guess taking it all the way back, you started at the company by looking at your LinkedIn 2 years before I did. I'm curious. Well, I guess the first part that stood out to me was you went to college on the East Coast, and here you are, I'm assuming like a young 20-something-year-old, and you find yourself in Southern California, I'm sure far from friends and family. So what got you to journey out west, and what were those first, year or two like of starting your corporate journey?
That's a good, deep question to kick it off.
Thank you. I hope you've had your coffee today.
I'm still consuming. I did fly the coop, so to speak. So I'm the youngest of 4, family-owned company that I grew up in. So very tight-knit family, always at the plant with my dad and my mom, and we're all just tight knit. That's probably the best way to say it.
Right.
And I went to college farthest away versus the rest of my siblings. I went to University of Delaware, so I guess not that far from New York. I'm from upstate New York, right on Lake Ontario. And my siblings went to a college near Syracuse, a college in northern Pennsylvania, and then a college in Philadelphia. And then I went to Delaware. I think I just always had that desire to separate myself, even though I loved my family, but just separate myself. And then the original plan was to actually go back to the family business. That was the plan after college. I went for food and agribusiness management. So my family's company was a food company. I was just going to go back to the family business. But I decided that it'd be a great idea to maybe work somewhere for a couple of years, work somewhere different for a couple of years. So I didn't just like follow in my dad's and my brother, who also worked there, footsteps, do things the same way they always did. I always had it in a drive to do things differently. And so I went to a trade show with my dad and my brother in Chicago called the Private Label Manufacturers Association trade show. And we were exhibiting in a back corner. My family company was still relatively small. And turns out we're exhibiting across from Mr. P and Jalen at Niagara. And we trade bottles of water for some chips and salsa that my family had because we did trade-based products. Yeah. And my dad and Mr. P totally hit it off because Mr. P had like video of one of our production lines in concourse to show it off to, potential customer or buyers.
Right.
We just started talking, and I was family business private label, and they were like, "We're growing. You should come out." And I was like, "Yeah, Southern California, like near the beach, sunshine." Yeah. And so that just lit the fire.
And I think, for people, maybe speaking to the younger people out there, one thing I haven't touched a lot on, and I don't know that this was maybe part of your thought process, it certainly wasn't part of mine, and that was finishing school and identifying a company that had this huge growth potential and a good culture, right? Like, I'll start with those two things. I certainly was not looking for either of those things. I just kind of like dumb lucked my way into it. Was that something you looked at, or were you kind of the same as me where it's just like, oh, it's a job. It's in California. It's near the beach. That's good enough for me.
I got lucky for sure. Like, how do you, like, that's what I think about with my kids, and I will talk about kids later, but how do I give them enough exposure and influence them enough to think about those things, culture and growth potential. I would say that when I went out to interview, I was so worried about me making the impression versus, of course, after a handful of companies and a lot of years, you're like, well, I'm interviewing you. The tables turn.
Yeah.
But back then, no way. I mean,
I basically feel like it's like winning the career lottery because, again, it was not deliberate at all. It just so happened to work out. And so that literally, I think, completely could change the trajectory of a person's career. Take out of the variable of just how good you are or the skills that you have. Like, you could be the most skilled person, the hardest working person, but if you're not at the right company, then it may not get you the results that you want. And I could argue that I was like mediocre or no skill, but I was a hard worker.
Yeah.
But I happened to be in the right place at a time that this company was going on a rocket ship. And I'm like, hey, I'm going to grab onto this rocket and go for the ride. So, I mean, did you feel that way as well? Or like, how did you feel about that whole thing?
I don't think I realized how lucky I was until it was a couple of years in and we really started to explode. But I didn't know I was making a great career decision. But of course, when I talk about it later, I'm like, best years you could have ever wanted, right?
Yeah.
Boots
I was
on the
super
ground,
deliberate about this.
Yeah. Checking in drivers, understanding, not deliberate, at like literally following my heart.
Okay, so we are the same. All right. I feel so less bad. I'm like, I had no plan. Okay, but I realize I want to set a little bit more context. So because this is still a privately held family owned company, so I won't get into too much specifics, but just to give people some context, back at this time that we're talking about is 2006, 2007, 2008, somewhere in that time frame. And the company was big by most company standards. We're talking, a nine-figure, low nine figures company at that point. That was basically starting on a trajectory towards becoming multi-billion dollars within like a 10-year span. So you're talking about literally you're talking about the type of growth that you would see from like a tech company, but coming from a manufacturing company, which is like completely unheard of. And I'll never forget this. And it's mostly because the guy referenced the Dodgers, was probably why it sticks with me. But there was a consultant that came in, and we were all sitting, in this conference room. And he goes, okay, for those of you that aren't aware of how special of an organization, do you know what I'm talking about? Of how special of an organization this is?
I actually talked to this gentleman a couple of months ago, and I distinctly remember that moment, and I remember how I felt.
It's so great. So you and I have never had this conversation, but clearly we're having the same experience. I thought I was like unique and special, but apparently I'm not. So
weird.
Okay. Oh, that's what it is. So this guy comes and he says, hey, listen, I'm going to like put it, cause I don't think you guys understand, because for a lot of us, it was like, this was our first company out of school. So we have no contact, right? There's nothing like, to me, it's like, hey, this is normal. Every company is like this, right? And it's like, no, it's not. And so what he said, listen, okay, so for perspective, let's say the big team around here is who? Okay, the Los Angeles Dodgers. What's the seating capacity of Dodger Stadium? 54,000 people. Okay. So imagine that instead of a person occupying each one of the seats in that stadium, that's occupied by a company, just a registered company. Okay. Got the visual in my head. So Niagara would be like 1 out of 54,000 in terms of growth, in terms of profitability, in terms of top line revenue. Like, so only one, and you would be number one in that entire stadium. And I was like, whoa, okay. Yeah, that's crazy. And that, by the way, this is like you said, several years into it. So I'm still a young 20 something, like not understanding the opportunity that's in front of me.
Yeah.
So.
I remember he said, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity / company. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Yeah.
Like let's keep, like, to your point, it was a few years in, because I don't think he started coming in till, was that like 2010?
Yeah, probably somewhere around there.
Around there.
And you see like a lot of, now that I look, right, the 20 something year olds today, they all want, like, they're more deliberate. Like you and I were just like, la, la, la. Oh, we found this cool company. Here we go. And we lucked into it. But I do think the 20 somethings are a little bit more deliberate about it today. The difference that I think is a lot of them, like, and nothing against tech or startups and things like that. Those are super risky businesses. They're going in, they're like, oh, I'm getting like some equity stake in this if I stay here for enough years, but this company is not profitable yet. And so it could be boom or bust. A lot of times, unfortunately, it's bust. But they're going in wanting this trajectory and things that you and I are describing, but it's super hard to find. It's easy to get the company that is growing and has that trajectory, but a healthy company that actually is going to be around for the long term is like where it gets really challenging. So we had the best of both worlds. Like looking back on that, it's like, I don't know. Well, we know how unusual that is, but it's just, right. It's just crazy. I don't know. It's crazy to think about today.
I agree. And then also like the random chance that I went to that conference with my brother and my dad while I was at college, and Niagara was there. Like it makes me think about the discovery of companies like that. The tech companies are out there, right? They're advertising. They've got this funding to get the hype out there. But companies like we came from, you usually don't hear about them. So how can folks today while they're in college or wherever they are before they're deciding on that company to invest their valuable time in, how do they discover those?
Yeah. Well, this is another thing that I think the more we talk, the more I'm realizing our careers had a lot of parallels. And one is, so there are a lot of people, and I've been to some conferences where you have that the whole point is networking. Yeah, they have the booths and you can look at their cool tech and videos that they have on a TV. That's fine. But a lot of it is there for networking. And one thing, especially from young people, is that they might go and get somebody's business card or like talk to somebody and then not follow up with them. Right. And like, that's what you did. Right. So you talk to this person, you're like, hey, they had an interesting story to tell. And he said, reach out to me. And so I did. And so I'm very similar at the same thing, similar story, except it happened at my college where he's giving a presentation on the weight or the gram weight of a bottle. Right. Oh, it went from 9 grams to 7.4 grams. Right. And again, I'm 21 years old.
I remember
so
that
like,
moment.
What in the world is this guy? What is he talking about? Right. But at the end, he handed out his business cards and he said, hey, give me a call. We're always looking for good people. And I wasn't the only one that got a business card. He gave it. It was just like everybody. I'm not special. He's just like, here's a business card. Here's a business card. I can tell you, I'm the only person that actually emailed him. Right. And when I did, it was within a couple hours, email back, say, come in here tomorrow. Let's talk. Which then led to 17, 18 years later. Right. So I guess my point being, you know, I think people talk about the word networking and getting out there, and people do that. I think where people tend to slip up or maybe miss the mark is it's not just about having that one conversation. It's about following up and actually developing that relationship. And I think that's something that you are amazing at. So maybe why don't you touch on that? Like, what's your secret behind the networking? And if you can maybe give a story or example of something that's you've already given one because it led to a career for you, but maybe another one of just like what a certain conversation that sparked this huge direction or move that you went into.
Yeah, I think this point cannot be emphasized enough. We talked about tech, and yes, tech is very powerful and something we all are thinking about more and more and more, especially with the advent of AI and co-pilots, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The human connection still needs to be valued and is valued, even by young people. I spend as much time as I can talking to younger people at my organization, president of Denver Transportation Club, and talking to young people in the industry, trying to get people to understand this expansive opportunities there are in supply chain overall. And I will say 90% of all the good stuff that's come out of my career and just generally my like working life or life in general is because of connections that I've made.
Yeah.
That's how ultimately behind all the things and all the cool, flashy stuff, there's people there. And you really never know who you're going to meet. And, you know, I'll say that again for folks that are, you know, wherever you are in your career, if you are in a space where people are vying for your time, give them your time. Like, I think that the thing that, you know, when I was thinking about this discussion, the thing that maybe sound very simple, but is the core of how I've approached networking and meeting new people is be nice first and foremost and be vulnerable. Like just be you. And I think the be nice thing took me a little time to learn as a female in the, you know, definitely like leaning into trucking industry. Right. I wasn't sure what the balance was there, but it just pays off so much.
Well, so I do want to touch on that part, but I think first thing I want to hit that you just said, which is, I think, so one thing that if I think about you, it's that you're a very personable person and genuine, right? I think, you know, you come across as somebody that's just like, hey, this is who I am. And I think a lot of people struggle with that. I use the phrase, you know, like people's emotional intelligence, I think, and generally speaking, can be lacking sometimes. And especially if you're thinking about, you know, being a manager and managing people and things like that, just like the lack of emotional intelligence is kind of mind-boggling to me. But what makes you stand out as a strong leader is not only do you know like the technical aspects of what you need to do, but you know how to get people to talk, to build the right teams because people want to work with you because you're a personable person, right? So all these different things. And I just feel like that's like a skill that is getting a little bit more overlooked and, you know, forget even the corporate environment, but also just like as a person in your own life and, you know, building those relationships. I don't know. Do you feel that as well? I just feel like that's probably your number one quality as a person, and it's gotten you, you know, pretty far.
I couldn't agree with you more. Like, especially as you rounded that comment out with saying just in your life in general.
Right.
I think choose your team wisely is something to think about often. And that's your team across the board, whether you're an individual contributor and you're partnering with people on a cross-functional project, or you're moving to a new town and you're meeting a lot of new people and trying to find the right friends, or you are a leader and you're building a team or replacing someone that maybe left, etc. Like, for example, I have 2 interviews this week for frontline people on my team. I am still obsessed with who is part of my core group.
Right.
And people that are the hiring managers that have worked with me for a while, they understand that now, and they're not offended that I'm, well, hopefully not, it doesn't seem like it, that I'm like dabbling in in that space, but
Right.
more often than not, they're overwhelmingly like, yes, we want the final character check. We want you to know who this person is, because it can change the trajectory of how the team operates and how they collaborate.
Right.
I mean, I agree with that starting to be overlooked, especially because technical ability, it feels like it's starting to outweigh that in how you advance in an organization.
Right.
When it has to be the other way.
That's a scary thought if that's the direction that we headed. But I think, and then just using that on the personal side as well is, you moved to, we were just talking about it before we started, where you moved to a town called Steamboat, Colorado, right?
Steamboat Springs.
I don't know, describe it for the people. But like you basically, like you transported your family into this brand new area where I'm assuming you knew nobody, right?
We knew one.
You knew one person. Okay.
Yes.
But same kind of deal, right? So just first of all, so people kind of get a sense like, well, for those that aren't skiers, like what is Steamboat? Like, why did you go out there? And like, how have you basically started from scratch to build like a community for you and your family?
Yeah. So Steamboat Springs, Colorado is northwest Colorado, almost, I would say like a 30-minute drive to the border of Wyoming and Colorado. So it's about 3.5 hours from Denver. We lived in the Denver area for 12 or 13 years before we moved out here. And the objective of moving out here, it sounds very official, but like the objective, like what the hell just happened?
What was your SMART goal with moving out there?
For me, it's like exponential happiness. And I am so driven to make my day-to-day life as much of what I desire as humanly possible. And so day-to-day life here is a small town. There's about 8,000 people in town where I don't have traffic when I'm bringing kids to stuff.
Right.
Where I can get outside every single day in the summer, in the winter, etc. My kids can get outside every single day. They have tons of freedom because that's what I was noticing in Denver as it got busier and busier. I couldn't take my eyes off them at a playground or whatever. And now, like my 7-year-old can ski a few laps with his friends and I'll be like, meet me at the chairlift at noon. And he meets me at the chairlift at noon.
Wow.
He takes a walkie-talkie. Like we live out a little bit out of town on a handful of acres. He takes a walkie-talkie and takes his little go-kart down to a friend's house and radios me when he gets there. Right. Like that was the impetus, was giving our kids an unbelievable childhood.
Yeah. Sounds
and like we changed gears driving towards overall life happiness versus career. It was a slow shift. It wasn't like cut it off when we moved to Colorado, right? Like the Niagara train, rocket, flying, and man, I'm so close with you all because I just love it. And I still care so much about the people and success, etc. But I had to start thinking about, where do I want to live and have my everyday be very fulfilling. And then we moved to Colorado, and then I worked for Coors and Golden, et cetera. And then this is kind of the culmination of really going for life.
Yeah.
And making the move to essentially a resort town with a small community.
So you're basically
and then starting over, like you mentioned.
Vacationing every day is what I just heard.
I mean, I'm in a co-working space and no one else is here. So I'm still living a regular life, so to speak.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's dive a little bit more into this, because I know most people don't prioritize what you just said. It's like, hey, I got to make as much money as I can. That typically happens in a bigger city. That's where the most opportunity is. And yeah, to your point, it's like I'm having to maybe pay more on a mortgage than I would like because it's so expensive where I'm at, but it's the option that I have. And so people are working more. They're less fulfilled. They're spending less time doing the things that they want to do. And so then they're unhappy. And so, like you mentioned at the very beginning, I see it now, right? It's like, hey, I always like kind of doing my own thing. Well, that's very clear here because you're doing your own thing. What it was the catalyst for that? Was that always like your intention that, hey, I'm going to put in 10, 12 years of focusing on my career, but then I'm still going to do that. But now this other part of the equation is going to start to play a bigger role. Did you have that foresight, or was this like when you started your first job, it was just like, well, I just kind of happened this way and it turned out the way I liked it?
So, sometimes it's funny, you reflect and you're like, damn, I'm lucky. And then you think a little bit harder and you're like, damn, I worked hard.
Yeah.
And really put in a ton of effort. So I think it's a combination, because some people could look at, oh, she lives in Steamboat and still maintains this job. Like, that's super lucky. Like, yeah. But I also put myself in this position by doing a heck of a lot of stuff, like you said, around networking and building a really strong credibility and track record of performing and being able to be extremely nimble and flexible and add value in any situation, right? So, but as far as like the catalyst to really drive towards that overall fulfillment is kids. I mean, we decided to have kids late. Like, honestly, I was on the no kid train for quite some time. I was like, I'm just going to mountain bike and ski and trail run and like do all that stuff and like crush at work. Cause like doing some work on a Sunday afternoon in the sunshine, just crush, you know?
Yeah.
And travel and do all the meetings and all the things, right? And then we had George. Like something changed in me when I was 32, and my husband was like, but can we still ride bikes? I'm like, for sure. And we had George when I was 33, so late in the game for some, but not for others. But that really changed everything. Like moving to Colorado was the start, right? Like, okay, we really want to have this outdoor lifestyle, but I was still, getting the job at Coors, now mostly Coors, was phenomenal. That family was fantastic. I had a really good runway there, which was fantastic. But then once I had George, everything changed.
Okay, well, it sounds like something would just unlock. Like it was in there all along, but it was something got unlocked, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the whole point of what I'm doing here, right? It's like, well, 5, 6, 7 years ago, would I be doing a podcast? I might be doing it, but it would be very industry heavy. Most of the people that listen to this would not want to listen to that because I'd get super deep and nerd out on the transportation, logistics, and supply chain industries. So I tried to spare people from that because this is a broader topic. And the whole point of it is like, I'm trying to unlock or discover or explore how I could be a better parent. Is really, for those that have been listening for a while, understand is I'm just trying to get insights from the best people that I know, or even friends of friends or whatever, and just give me some insights on this journey because, I'm sitting here driving and, I have 2 boys in the back seat that are constantly asking me a million questions about everything under the sun, of which I have answers to some, but not most. But I'm going to go talk to people like Alyssa, and they're going to give me some more answers to help fill in the gaps. That is basically my main priority at this point. I did pretty well for myself, but as you've heard on this episode alone, a lot of it is by dumb luck. Yeah, there was some hard work that went in once I lucked into that situation. But had I not lucked into that situation, who the heck knows what would have happened or where I would have ended up. So if I could, through this process, give my kids more deliberate insights and like, hey, when you go look for a job, you're interviewing them. They're not just interviewing you. Or go seek out a company that's financially stable but offers growth. Things that I had no clue to think about. It's like, okay, I now know these things and I can like let you skip a couple steps ahead. So I feel like you're kind of like, when you were mentioning that, that's kind of what you're describing to me.
I love that so much. And I'm laughing because I could not agree more. And I love the intros with Adrian. I cannot. I was actually on a plane when I listened to the one with Craig, and I was like laughing and crying because I want to talk to my kids right now. Like I was listening to you talk to Adrian. I was like, I want to hear what question they're asking my husband. And that makes me a little emotional because not everything's perfect, everyone.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that part. Thank you, first of all, because he's this is that again. That was part of the thing. I was doing that other podcast, and he would literally sit under the chair that I was recording, and then after just asking a million questions, I'm like, well, why don't you start your own podcast? And that's basically what this is, right? But one of the reasons I want to talk, and you've been on my list for a long time to connect with. I've known you for almost like 20 years now, which is crazy to think about.
That's crazy.
But I don't travel much for work anymore. And there was a time where I really enjoyed it, especially if it was like hey, we're going to Nashville. It's like, sign me up. Or like, hey, we're going to Bentonville, Arkansas. No offense, Bentonville, Arkansas, but I'll pass on that one. Right. But like when you're in your 20s and you have no responsibilities or baseball practices or things like that, it's like, yeah, if you're going to a cool city, like sign me up. I'm super down for that. And now not so much, right? It's like, do I still have to travel for work? Yes, sometimes, but I can be more deliberate on the trips that I take or make sure that I get the most out of the time, right? Where in maybe previously I would have spread an agenda out over 3 days. It's like, okay, how do I do this in 2, right? So I can get home And that especially as Adrian got older and starts to notice that I'm gone more, right?
Mhm.
And it's not like crying as I'm walking out the door per se, but definitely like a sadness there that I'm just like, oh man, I'm sorry. And like, again, I'm trying to plan around baseball practice so I don't miss games and all that sort of stuff. And for the most part, I'm able to do that. But yeah, they get to an age where they notice you're gone and they notice that this, that, and the other. And so, one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you was, you've started this beautiful life, it sounds like, in Steamboat, which also sounds like it's in kind of the middle of nowhere, which means travel's really hard for you, right? Like you have to drive 3.5 hours to Denver, and then you have to take a connecting flight to get to where you're trying to. And so it ends up being these really long days of travel that you have to do for work. And so I was like, well, yeah, Adrian, this still really bothers him. It's something on his mind. I know the perfect person to talk to, and that's you, right? So you talked about prioritizing family, but also, wanting to be successful in what you're doing in your career. So yeah, I said a lot of things right there, but just if you could speak to how you're now balancing that part of the equation.
It's a deep and wide one for sure, because yes, Steamboat is amazing and we're super happy in our day-to-day life, but I sacrifice, and my family sacrifices, because for me to continue on with what I'm doing from a career perspective, which we are prioritizing as well, I do need to travel. And one thing to note is I do have an airport in Steamboat, which is amazing.
Okay.
However, to your point around trying to do things in a day, like what was it last week or 2 weeks ago? Basically a day trip to LA, and that required me to drive because I couldn't get the connection in time. So trying to really make sure that if I'm gone, I can pack it in. So instead of doing small trips 3 weeks in a row, try to do one big trip where I'm gone Monday through Friday. And that takes collaboration with your partner if you have one. I can't say that, something that I cannot underscore enough is a supportive partner in your life. And I know some people do it without one, and amazing. But just from my personal perspective, finding that right person in all the ways, I know we all know how important it is. I know you have it with Christina, but holy cow, I would not, we would not be where we are today without that teamwork that we have.
Sure.
But as far as, balancing them and the travel and the work, it's been a very long work in progress. However, there's some things that I've definitely learned along the way that have helped me a lot. One of the things is talk to your kids about your work, kind of like what you were saying with the podcast. And then even like you mentioned on the podcast with Craig, showing them the Costco store, right? Like making it really real. So they think that trucks are cool. And well, of course, kids, little boys, they're 2 little boys, think trucks are cool, but Uber Freight, and they see the logo, and it's definitely a well-known logo, etc. And so they want to understand trucking a lot. And so it's really fun to talk to them about it and tell them exactly where I'm going, why I'm going there, who I'm going to meet with. I've even FaceTime at the office when I go to our Chicago office, so they can see what it looks like, right? Just really involve them. And I was talking to George the other night before I was leaving on a trip. I was like, how do you feel? Because I hadn't asked him in a while, and he'll be 8 in May. So he's got a lot more that he can provide me. And he's like, I know you're going to come back and you're not gone for a month or anything. So it's all right. He's also a very even keel kid. Yeah. And my younger one always gives me a stuffed animal to take. And last time it was this larger dinosaur. I'm like, I don't know if he's going to fit. He's like, don't worry, he's squishy. Yeah. So I always take a stuffed animal. And the first night I send them a picture of the stuffed animal on the bed, so they know that they kind of know where I am a little bit.
Yeah, I love that. I think, sorry, go. No, I just want to speak to that part about involving them. I think that's awesome. And to your point, it's maybe it's that curiosity or unknown that's annoying or frustrating or scary to them. And so if you let them peek behind the curtain, so to speak, it's oh yeah, this is it's not a big deal. And like you said, mom's coming home at the end of the week and things like that. So I think that's, I guess just involving them. I think maybe it's when they're so young, you might I don't know. It sounds so obvious when you say it, but maybe it's not so obvious.
It wasn't super obvious to me until they started playing with this truck that said Uber Freight on the side. And I was like, we should talk about this more, and then talk about the trucks on the road. And then, they want to understand why a flatbed was coming in empty and leaving full. And I was like, let's go. And then my son, George, asked, well, what about fuel? And I was like, yes, buddy. What about fuel?
Yeah.
So it got, and then I drew some things, and he was like, and then I went too far. Like that's like kind of like when you're talking about the nerd out in the podcast. Like we won't go there, audience.
Yeah. Right.
But the other thing I definitely want to mention when you're talking about baseball practice and stuff like that is do that stuff. So like I travel a lot, and I could easily say, no, I won't coach soccer.
Right.
And I did until last year, fall season, I said yes, that I would coach George. And again, supportive partner. And your community goes back to networking in your community. When I was gone, they had practice on Tuesday and games on Friday. So I was like, sweet, I can always make games. There will be a handful of practices. The soccer season, they're young. The soccer season is only like 7 weeks long. If I can make 4 out of 7 practices and I have to ask someone to cover for me 3 times,
right,
and then I'm there for every game, like I'm still George's head coach, and he was so happy. And he's like, Mom, will you please coach me in the spring again? So I got, at this time, I prepared a little bit more, and I got another mom who doesn't travel for work and doesn't have a very demanding work schedule, doesn't know much about soccer, but she's like, I'll help you out, right? It's your tribe, choose your team, right?
Right.
And I am pumped, right? I get to coach him again. And yes, I know that there's at least 1 practice so far that I'm going to miss. And I'm sure there's going to be 2 more or more. But I think people right away are like, I can't commit. I'm not going to do it. Find a way.
Find a way. Absolutely. I have a guy. So I'm coaching T-ball, and he's like, hey, I'm going to make some, but not all. I'm like, that's fine. Make what you can make. And he comes in to practice one day, and his eyes are like bloodshot. I'm like, whoa, what's this guy been up to? I'm like, hey, how's it going? So and so. And he's like, I just took a red eye back from Saudi Arabia. I'm like, so I could be at this practice. I'm like, whoa, dude, like that's intense. And thank you.
That's more than I do. So kudos to that guy.
Think, to your point, we're kind of all in that, we're not, I don't think we're uniquely special in this sense, but again, just, I think illustrating for people, hey, look, we're all kind of dealing with this. And even for those that aren't traveling, but it's just like, hey, I have this extra shift I can pick up that I need for the family. And so I've got to make this happen. And then just, trying to find the way to balance that. And the last thing I want to mention on this is, you said George is, I think you said turning 8, right? He's going to turn 8. And it's like, okay, it's kind of a bummer. They're sad a little bit when you leave, but like in 3 or 4 years, he's probably not even going to note. Like, I don't want to make you sad, but he's probably not going to even notice that you're gone, right? Because I was, I grew up, I was a boy, and like, you kind of get to a point where it's like, okay, I don't like need my parents really as much anymore, and it's not a big deal if they're gone for a week or two. So there's almost like this part of you too that it's like, okay, like I'm sad that you're sad, but at the same time, it's kind of like nice that you are missing me, because I do know that there will be a time where you're not going to miss me. Does that ever cross your mind?
Oh, 100%. Because, and could be the mom in me, because I'm like, oh my gosh, should I have put my career on hold for these years that they do miss me, right? And then hit the gas when, later on. And you can kill yourself in the coulda, shoulda, woulda situation, and like deep thoughts of all of that, but I try not to, and think that when I'm home, I am very present. I also, like, for those that work from home, like I'm in a co-working space because, and this is just me, but I not want to shut my computer at the end of the day, put it in my backpack, put that backpack in the office along with my phone. And because when I'm traveling, I mean, I just hammer 24/7. And sometimes my husband's like, I'm jealous, you get a lot of work done when you're gone. And I'm like, I do, actually. And so when I'm home, I have to have that separation, because when I'm gone, I'm all the way gone.
Yeah. So I think in just touching on the work piece a little bit, and I didn't mention this, but you're at the VP level of a multi-billion-dollar company now. So you're in a massive role running a very important program for them. And I think I haven't mentioned this, but you're the first woman that I'm having on. So I have to take advantage of this and get your perspective. And that is, I think, like, from a cultural perspective, a lot of the times it's the husband or the dad or the man that is, usually on that big career trajectory, and, that gets prioritized versus you're crushing it. You're actually accelerated well beyond where most people ever get to in their career. What, if any, challenges come with being a female and being like just as badass as you are working? I don't know. I don't know a way to ask that question. I hope you got what I'm saying.
There's there's the work aspect and there's the home aspect, because there's like, especially when not just being the mom. But even before that, being in a male dominated industry, and I mean, there's dynamics there at home that you have to work through with me traveling a bunch and conferences and dinners and getting, spoiled on all of those things because you're a big buyer, et cetera. So there's, I mean,
Right.
I can't, again, like a supportive partner and through all of that is beyond important, not only just to be able to talk about like what my work life looks like and my interactions and always be surrounded by the opposite sex, but also someone that will push you to keep pushing. Like there have been a number of times in my career, even just in the last year, that I've, unloaded on Kevin and told him like, there's a situation that I just don't know how to navigate. And he provides me with such great perspective and the push, even though I like externally I'm like super driven and I totally am, but I still have that like for example, the business unit you mentioned, I had zero experience in the asset space before this. And I took that on 2 years ago. And I was like, oh no, I'm going to be found out. Like I don't know what I'm doing.
Fake it till you make it. You're faking it till you make it. That's what you're
doing. And Kevin's like, that's not why they want you to do this. Like, and had to help reassure me because, there's that saying, or I don't know what to say, but either way, where men will apply for a job that checks 5 out of 10 boxes from a qualification standpoint for them. And women need it to be 10 out of 10 boxes because we're just like, oh, I can't do that 10th thing. So I guess I'm not going to apply for the job. And that is a thing. And I have it too. And having somebody to support through all of it is really important. So like that, I can't express that enough, like transparency, support, et cetera, at home. And especially as you move into mom world. I mean, I distinctly remember this meeting I was at Molson Coors, and it was me and it was like 10 men. And it was shortly after I came back from maternity leave. And we were talking about a very strategic decision. And I had like 10% of my thoughts there and like 90% like, oh, when do I need to pump? I need to find out if he pooped. Like all of it, like, like how did nap go? Oh shoot, our nanny's going to be out of town. So I talked to the nanny share mom, and, like, and like, oh, the shop, et cetera. And I like remember that moment and I was like, this is going to be really hard. So like those things in the workplace. And then honestly, like really quickly, like going back to where we started with dumb luck. So lucky where we both worked together that they didn't care that I was a girl. Like I went out to the plant and led a bunch of men much older than me, and our boss did not care. It wasn't like, oh, I need to find a strong man. It was like, who cares?
So listen, I'm going to cut you out. I don't think that's it. And so people, I think there's two different. I could be wrong. I'm going to give you the outsider's perspective, and that is that you are two different people, in my opinion. There's some people that maybe know the Alyssa that we're getting a feel for today, which is the more personal side of you, but like don't get it twisted. Like on the business side, like you could be a pit bull. I've seen times where, and maybe this was like an overcorrection on your part because like you said, you're sitting in a room in this industry that's 85-90% male dominated. And so maybe you felt the need to like assert yourself in a very aggressive way. But I'll tell you a quick story that stands out to me. And that was like, we're dealing with a supplier that's not performing. And it's over the phone. It's, it's through a conference call, but you and I are sitting on one side and the supplier sitting on the other side, just kind of giving us the runaround about this, that, and the other. And this is a company, a guy that's very well known in the industry, a billionaire, probably running a multi-billion-dollar company. Yet you're over here like basically ripping his head off because he's not giving like an answer that is with any substance to it. And like they took that seriously. Do you know what I'm talking about? Okay. So that's what I'm saying, right? It's like, yes, you can be nice and bubbly and personable, but like when you need to flip a switch and do what you got to do, like you do that. And so I think you get a lot of respect in that way. And so that's what I say, that there's two different versions of you and you know when to use which version.
It's funny you say that because if my husband's dealing with something that needs a little extra oomph, whether he's like dealing with maybe a home vendor or something like that, if we're doing something, he's like, you don't want to talk to my wife. and he'll sometimes say, he's like, why can't I get work Alyssa right now?
Yeah.
This is what I need.
See, okay.
You
so
know? And
right.
I'm like, no, it's true. But I'm like, but I'm home. We're happy. And not that I'm not happy, but you're absolutely right. And I've throttled those over the years because I've continued to try to navigate, how do I get to the best possible solution? Like more forceful, more,
right.
More accommodating, et cetera, depending on the severity level of the situation. So you're right. It's something that has taken a lot of time to figure out, but for sure early on so you're right. Early on, it definitely came out. So that probably helped my cause at our, in our early years.
I'm just thinking like because you're personable, because you're able to read people so well, you can probably default to the nicer version, the like, hey, I can get things done using the path of least resistance and be, who I normally am, but also understanding when the occasion calls for something more than that. And I think some people can maybe use that, and either it comes off as not authentic or, like you said, maybe forceful, or something where it's like it's harder to be taken seriously, versus when this version of her comes out, like she's not messing around, like you better get your
serious
ass together, whatever we're working on. And so it's finding that balance, but I think that comes from a very deep understanding of how to read and interpret people.
And that goes back to meeting lots of people, like back to the beginning of what we were talking about with networking and just being willing to meet with people, follow up with people from conferences, et cetera. It just fills that inventory of what are all these different personality types, and how do I work with different people, and how do I kind of get to that thing that will both like go, whoa, this is going to be cool. you know?
So cool. Well, Alyssa, I think I really appreciate the conversation today. It's really great to catch up. We haven't done this in some time other than, just touching base on work-related stuff. But I hope, just kind of blasting back into the past and remembering where we came from a little bit and, where we're going. This journey is nowhere near over. We're still, right? I'm looking at it like not a lot of gray hairs on either side of the table. So we still got a lot left in the tank, right? We're gonna see how far we can take this. So I'm excited to keep watching your journey and really appreciate your friendship.
Well, likewise. And one thing I do want to say before we wrap is when I talked about choose your team wisely, I thought about you a lot. You, right off the bat, were very open and honest, always. Like I knew I could always get exactly what you were thinking and feeling, and you would form those opinions. You very well thought out. And you were part of my early team, right? Like it was the beginning when we were building what we were building there. And having that so early on to be able to have those deep conversations, whether it's work or personal strategy, et cetera, helped influence how I continue to see success in doing that moving forward. So can't express that enough, that you're helped build how I go about building teams and partnering with other people in a very big way. I
appreciate that. But I'll throw that back on you and say that was only possible because of creating a environment of trust. And again, that goes back to whatever work environment, personal environment that you're in, is you can only have, in my opinion, that level of success and transparency and openness if there's a trust that like, hey, if I say this, I'm not going to get fired tomorrow or something, right? It's like, no, like, let's be real. I might not like what you have to say this time, but like, let's work through it. And again, I think speaking from, I've worked at a place before where there wasn't that trust, and it felt terrible, felt gross.
Yeah.
I wanted to get back to a place where I felt safe and could be trusted. And that's where I'm at today, right? It's very much even though it's a massive company, there's a huge familial component to it, even still to this day. And a lot of that is rooted in this trust that I just can't put a dollar value on. So I appreciate that. But that was because you helped create a environment of trust. So thank you. So
love it.
All right. Well, enjoy your beautiful environment of Steamboat and living this vacation lifestyle every day. And maybe one day when we all grow up, we'll get to be more like Alyssa. But thank you for your time, Alyssa. Had a lot of fun.
Thank you. This is great.